What's up everyone, it's Mr. Lang, and in this video I'm going to give you an introduction to graphs that tell a story. And all you need for this video is your pencil, of course, and the worksheet I handed out in class that is surprisingly titled Graphs That Tell a Story. Now if you don't have that worksheet, then you can just print it out from the Schoology website. So once you got those two things, you are good to go. So let's get started. We're just going to look at question number 1 today. And it reads, here is an elevation versus time graph of a person's motion. Can we describe what the person might have been doing? So an elevation versus time graph is pretty typical for graphs that tell a story. And before we think about like a topic of what the person might have been doing, I think it helps to take a closer look at the details of the graph. It's elevation versus time. The time is in minutes, and it looks like we start at 0 minutes and go to 10. So this is a 10-minute story. And in the y-axis, it's elevation, and the elevation's in feet. And it looks like we go from 0 feet to a height of 15 feet here. So you think about, well, what type of things would take 10 minutes and have a person start on the ground maybe and get to 15 feet. So one example might be walking up and down a hill. That's a pretty common thing to say. Another one is going up and down a ladder. So I'm going to use the ladder story here. I think that'll work pretty well. Being on a ladder for 10 minutes might seem like a long time, and 15 feet is pretty tall for a ladder, but it's possible, so just work with it. So this is my ladder story. And as we kind of look at the graph itself, you see it's broken down into different parts. We call these parts intervals. So this first interval, it's a positive slope here, so the elevation is going up. Then for this part, the slope is 0, so the elevation doesn't change. Then this is a quick interval. It goes up pretty steep up to 15, and then again the elevation doesn't change for, it looks like, a minute or two there. Then now we're going back down, so from 15 feet all the way to about 1 foot, it looks like it's a steep decrease. Then we have another flat line of 0, and then a gradual decrease there. So over 10 minutes we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different parts to the story, or intervals. So let's break this down into the different time intervals. We start at time 0, so 0 minutes, to about, it looks like the x coordinate here would be about 3. So for time 0 to 3, the elevation changes from 0 to 10. So it took them 3 minutes to climb 10 feet. So they would go to about here, if we consider this ladder to be about 15 feet off the ground at the top. So they would go to about, I would say here. So it took them 3 minutes to go from here to here. Now it seems like a long time. Maybe the person's like shaking because they're afraid of heights or something like that. Or maybe they're doing something on the way up, like painting. I don't know. But for the first 3 minutes, so from the time interval from 0 to 3, they climb up 10 feet. Alright, the next interval is pretty short. It's from where the minute starts at 3 to about 4, so that's 1 minute. So it takes them 1 minute, but they don't change elevation. So the person's going to stick right there. So what that tells me is they're not moving. I would guess maybe the person's resting. They could be doing anything. They could have gotten a phone call, on their cell phone. They decided it would be a great time to take a call from 10 feet up in the air. I don't know, but I'll just say it probably makes more sense to say they rested. Then this next interval is really steep. It goes from 10 feet to 15 feet, and that happens over a very short time. It's not even 1 full minute here. It looks to be maybe about half a minute, maybe to 4.5. So what I said here is they did a quick climb up 5 feet to the top. So that would look like the person gets to, whatever the top here. So that's a much faster pace. The rate of change was much greater than on the 0 to 3 there. Then again, the elevation doesn't change up at the top, and it looks like that happens from the 4.5 minute part to the 6 minute. So that's what I would say, from 4.5 to 6, they rest again. So they're just hanging out up there. Now they're going to make their way back down. So from 15 feet down to about 1 foot, that happens over from 6 to, I'll say, 7 minutes here. So from 6 to 7, they go down 14 feet. So that's pretty quick for a minute compared to how long it took them to go up. But maybe they're sliding down, or maybe they're just, I don't know what would make them go in such a hurry. But so they quickly climb down 14 feet. Then from this part, from minute 7 to minute 8, again, it looks like they rest. And then there's a very gradual, well, let me go down that 14 feet. I forgot to do that before. That's okay. So we get down to the 14. And then they rest here for looks like 1 minute. And then it takes them 2 minutes to gradually go down to 10 feet. So it's kind of like they're going, very, 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 very slowly. Who knows what they're doing? And so that would be from minutes 8 to 10. They slowly climb down a foot. And that's the end of the story. They get down to the ground. I know that's not an incredibly interesting story, but this graph does tell that story. Or at least it could. So here's what I want you to do for the check your understanding. We're not going to move off this first page. What I want you to do is come up with an alternate story for number 1. One that involves hiking. So I want you to think about a person starts, 0 feet, and then hikes up and then back down. And I want you to think about kind of how that would change from the latter story, maybe a little bit. The second thing I want you to do for the check your understanding is I want you to come up with a story for number 2. So for number 2, it says make up an elevation versus time graphing story for this graph. Now, you got to check this out. It's a little bit different. It goes into the negative feet. So you got to think about what would actually cause someone or something to go negative feet. And there's a bunch of different things you could come up with. So I want to see what you come up with. You can be creative. So just to kind of recap here, what I want you to do for your check your understanding is come up with an alternate story for number 1 that involves hiking up and down a hill. And then I just want you to do question 2. There's nothing to do online. There's no online quiz. So just bring your sheet into class, and we're going to discuss it and see what everyone said. Thanks for listening. See you in class.